Hey guys, it's Megan. Welcome to my March 2015 wrap-up. I did considerably better this month compared to February. I managed to get through 10 books this month, and almost all of them were absolutely amazing. I can't wait to talk about them. The first book that I got through was I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. This is a wonderful young adult contemporary book, and it is about a brother and sister, twins, Noah and Jude, and they suffer a tragedy when their mother dies. And this was wonderful because it took place through both of their perspectives. So it switched off not only for when they are like at their current age, 16, but also when they are younger, like around the age of 13. And it was one of those stories where you are established and you know that they don't like each other, and you know you're going to gradually find out why. But the way she does it is just brilliant in terms of the layers, and you just gradually go through to figure out what has happened and the kind of things that they've done to each other to make them end up the way they are. This is the second book by Jandy Nelson that I've read. Last summer, I read The Sky is Everywhere, which I also loved, and I just really, really love her writing. Another thing I loved is that both Noah and Jude are artists. Jude is a sculptor and Noah is a drawer. Being an artist myself, I really identified with them and the time they spend in studio and just the process. I loved it. Needless to say, I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars, and I highly recommend that you pick this up. Next, I picked up My Fair Lady, which is the novelized version of the classic Broadway musical by Monica Dickens. I've never read the play. I've never read Pygmalion, of which My Fair Lady was based on. So this was just a novelized version of the Broadway play, and it was okay. I couldn't help but wonder how much of the backstory that we don't see in the film is in the musical. So I think I'm going to want to read like the script of the musical as well as Pygmalion, and then know how much of this is accurate in terms of the story. But yeah, I only gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't badly written by any means. I just wasn't sure how much of it was really like from the original story. Next, I finished 1984 by George Orwell. This was my February classics pick, and I was just running a bit behind on it. But I finished it in early March, and it was amazing. Let me tell you, it was depressing as hell. And it's set in a dystopian world where original thoughts are not allowed. It's totalitarian with one major political ruler, Big Brother. It's just, you can't help but wonder, because like this was so big when it first came out. I just wonder how many dystopian tales that came after it are directly influenced, like how many of them came as a result of this book. You are robotic and there's rations. Sex is a political act only to procreate and breed more followers of Big Brother. Children turn on their families for not following the party enough. People disappear. It's pretty brutal, but I thought the way that it was written and the story itself was absolutely brilliant, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I decided I wanted to go for a adult contemporary, and I picked up The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry by Gabrielle Zevin. I couldn't wait to read this, and yeah, it was for good reason. This book was positively amazing. So yes, it tells the story of a man whose wife has passed about a year before, and he's just become really grumpy and kind of lost his motivation to be good at his job. He's just stuck in a one-track mind, and he's depressed, and he doesn't care who knows. And one day he finds this little girl left in his bookstore with a note from the mother saying that her last wish was that her daughter be raised in a book-filled environment. That's all I'll say for now. I really don't want to give out too many plot details, but this goes over an extended period of time, which kind of surprised me. So much happens, and all the loose ends are tied up at the end of it, and it was just so well written. And one of the biggest reasons why I loved this was it's a book about books. There is books all throughout, and I now have this list of new books and stories that I'm going to be reading simply because of this book. He does recommendations throughout the whole thing at the beginning of every chapter. So yeah, I gave this 5 out of 5 stars as well. Next, I picked up Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. This was my March pick for my classics, and I had never read any Salinger before, although I have a couple of books by him already, and I wanted to obviously start with his greatest classic, and I had never read it before, so yes, it was good. I found it annoying, and it was after when I was talking with my sister that I kind of got a perspective on the thing, and I sort of wish I'd discussed it with her before I did my review on Goodreads. The character of Holden Caulfield, I don't think you're meant to like him. I think it's really evident because he just gets so much more progressively annoying throughout the book. you can't really find too much to say about him in a positive way. But that being said, I really did enjoy Salinger's writing. I should mention, this is about a boy who goes to a boarding school and he's being kicked out. I think it's like his third or fourth school that he's being kicked out of, and he doesn't want to go home and face his parents right away, so he just sort of leaves the school and just decides to stay away from home for like 2 or 3 days before Christmas vacation, when he's supposed to go home anyway. So they'll find out then. So he takes off late in the night to New York City, and we just sort of follow his adventures from there. He has a limited amount of money, and he likes to drink. Really, though, he just wants to talk with people all the time throughout the book. That is all he wants to do. Since this wasn't my normal cup of tea, I only gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. But that being said, I really do want to read more of Salinger's work. I've got Franny and Zooey and 9 stories by him, and I do want to read those. After that, I was feeling a little YA fantasy / sort of historical fiction, and so I picked up The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslie Walton. If this cover doesn't make you want to read it, I don't know what will. This book was so good. I could not stop reading it. I couldn't put it down. I was enthralled with the story. The narrator is older Ava Lavender, and she goes back 3 generations to when her grandmother is a young girl and starts her story from there. And so we see these generations of women up until her birth and then from then on. And she keeps switching perspectives between these 3 women, and it's just awesome. It goes into perspectives of the villain as well as some other minor characters. But it's set primarily in the first half of the 20th century. I think it goes back into a little bit of the 19th century, but not for too long. But it's just these 3 generations of love and relationships. All relationships are just explored on every level. And there's a lot of mystery and not overwhelmingly an amount of drama, but there is mystery. And it's just so beautifully told. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars, and I would highly recommend that you pick this one up. The next book that I decided to pick up was Aristotle and Dante Discovered the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Allier-Sans. I know I totally butchered that name, but it's inevitable. It happens every video I manage to botch up some author's name. I'm sorry. But yes, this book takes place in the 80s, and it is from the perspective of Aristotle, this teenage boy who befriends this boy, Dante. They're the same age, and they are a lot alike, but yet they are also so different. And it takes place over the course of, I think, a couple of years. They just develop this friendship that is unbelievable. You're in love with their friendship, and you really want them to get together. And honestly, I was so surprised at the end of the book when everything finally came out. It was just, once it got past a certain point, I had to finish it. I had to know what happened. Also, this book is just magically written. It is so good. Plus, look at the cover. It's so beautiful. You can also notice that it has won a bunch of awards. So I would definitely pick up this book if you hadn't already. I had heard about it almost a year ago when I first started BookTube. So yeah, I would read it. Quite obviously, I also gave this 5 out of 5 stars. And the next book that I picked up was Boy, Tales of Childhood by Roald Dahl. Roald Dahl is one of my favorite children's book authors of all time, if not my most favorite, because he wrote two classics, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Matilda, and so many others. He hasn't written a bad book, at least that I've read. And so this is his autobiography of his childhood years, going all the way up to, I think he's around 21 years old, just before World War II. So I love this. I love the way that it was written because it reveals so much about him. There are just little vignettes and stories that sort of give us clues to how he became the writer that he was. Stories that he talks about, you read and you think, so that's where the idea for this book came from, or an instance that happened in this book. I found a couple of those, and it was awesome. You really identify with him as a child, and I like to think that this is like a little time capsule too, because there was stuff about this, like in English boarding schools for children back in the around the 20s when he was a kid. I didn't know a lot about them, and there's stuff that I wouldn't have thought about that he made me think about. And so I found this to be really good, educational, and entertaining. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars as well. The second last book that I managed to finish in the month of March is Watercolor Fairy Art by Sarah Burrier. This is an instructional type book that I picked up not that long ago. As you can see, it tells you everything. Just everything you need to know about watercolor art. I made notes. I love books like this because I'm getting more and more into watercolor, and so books like these, they really help me to learn information and new techniques. And about some other artists too. She devotes a whole section to the back of other watercolor artists and some of their tips as well. For being so beautiful and so wonderfully informative and lovely to read, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars too. And the last book that I completed in the month of March was The Wide Window. This is book 3 in Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, and it chronicles the time when the Baudelaire children go to live with their Aunt Josephine on Lake Lachrymose. Count Olaf shows up in the form of, some other terrible disguise, attempting to steal their fortune and all that usual stuff. This was good. I forgot about a lot of what happened. I mean, the big stuff, obviously, I remember, but the little things I had forgotten, so it was great to read those again. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I can't really explain why. I just felt like it was lacking in some way. I really wish that Aunt Josephine had been at least as a nice enough guardian as Uncle Monty was. I feel like her being the way she was, in addition to everything else, made it almost too dismal. I mean, the thing about these books is it is an unfortunate event, one unfortunate event right after the other, but at least sandwiched in between, there are these little moments which make reading the series worthwhile. Just little tiny nice things that happen to them, and there just wasn't a single one in this book. So I think that's the reason I only gave it a 4. But other than that, I really enjoyed it because I love this series so much. So that is it. Those are the 10 books that I managed to read this month. I am pretty proud of myself, and I know in the summer months I will be reading just as many, and I cannot friggin' wait. What books did you guys read in the month of March? I would love to know and discuss. Please write in the comments below about them. And that is all for this video. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you soon with my April TBR. Bye, everyone.